The Christmas Eve ghost story, the game of finding. It was Christmas Eve, and I found myself alone in my dorm room in New York City. It's not that I didn't have friends, it's just that they were either still in the military, struggling with their theses, spending the holiday with their loved ones, or vacationing in some far-off place. So there I was, alone in my small Manhattan apartment. What to do? What could I do? I wandered the streets of the neighborhood, walking up and down the same blocks, but every store I passed was eerily empty. All the students, it seemed, had either gone to Central Park or left the city to escape the silence. Should I go out? Where could I even go? Maybe I wasn't the only one feeling lonely. With that thought, I bought some snacks and headed back to my place. The entire apartment complex seemed deserted, leaving me as its sole occupant. I sat back down at my computer, immersing myself in online articles. It was here, in the virtual world, that I felt most at home. Soon enough, the warmth returned to my heart. The forums were full of festive greetings, reminding me that in this vast world, there were still people who cared for others. I decided to join in the celebration. Picking up my phone, I called everyone in my contact list to wish them a Merry Christmas. But after several attempts, each call was redirected to voicemail, one after another. Maybe everyone was just busy. Maybe they didn't hear their phones. With a sigh, I tossed my phone onto the bed. Why not call a stranger, like those online friends who cheerfully wished everyone well? With that idea, I picked up my phone again, dialed 09, and randomly pressed the keys with my eyes closed. Hello? A girl answered the phone, her voice slightly hoarse. Sham, I just wanted to say Merry Christmas, I stammered, suddenly unsure of myself. Who are you? She asked. You don't know me. I just wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, I replied, feeling a bit awkward. My attempt at spreading cheer had turned into a nuisance. The call was abruptly ended, and I knew I had scared her. Such behavior wasn't much different from a stalker. I laughed at myself for being so naive and decided to stop this childish game. Just then my phone rang. Hello, I answered as the caller ID was hidden. Merry Christmas, the hoarse voice of the girl echoed again. I was stunned, unsure how to respond. Are you bored? She asked after a moment. Bored? Well, a bit, I admitted, though it felt like an understatement. I'm bored too. Let's play a game, she quickly suggested. What game? The game of finding each other. Finding each other? How does that work? We ask each other questions. You can't directly ask where I am, but you can ask anything else. I'll try to make it hard for you to guess my location. All right, I'm in, I said, intrigued by the game. Who asks first? I asked, eager to start this mind game. I'll go first. What are you doing? She began with a question that seemed impossible to pinpoint my location. I thought for a moment. I'm getting dressed, I replied, putting on my coat to head out. Okay, your turn, she said. What about you? What are you doing? It was my turn, but I wasn't sure what to ask. I'm climbing stairs, she responded. Are you just coming home? I asked, curious. You can only ask one question at a time. It's my turn again. Are you going out? Yes, how did you know? I pondered the connection between getting dressed and going out. Because it's obvious. Are you walking or taking a bike? She asked again, catching me off guard. I haven't decided yet. It depends. Are you home yet? I cautiously replied, tossing the question back to her. I'm not at home. What do you plan to do outside? She continued the game seamlessly. Buying stuff and trying to find you. What are you doing if you're not going home? I asked in return. I'm looking for you, she replied, mirroring my answer. I chuckled, turned off the lights, and left my room. I walked down the corridor, preparing to descend the stairs to buy snacks, all the while playing this intriguing game with her. Do you live on the 3rd floor? She suddenly asked, accurately guessing my location. No, I live on the 4th floor, I lied, playing along with the game. You're lying, she quickly responded, surprising me with her intuition. I'm not, I said defensively, feeling a bit guilty as I continued my descent downstairs. Really? She questioned, skepticism in her voice. It's your turn to ask a question. I quickly changed the subject because your apartment only has 3 floors, she said as I reached for the door handle. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Just then I heard a faint tapping sound outside, echoing her words from the phone and at my door. The game's on you to ask now, she urged again, both through the phone and from outside my door. The footsteps stopped, right outside. She was there, outside my 3rd floor apartment door. I hesitated, pulling my hand back from the doorknob. Hurry up, it's your turn, she pressed, both on the phone and from outside. I realized it was actually her turn to ask, but she seemed not to notice. What mattered was, how did she know where I was? I took a deep breath. I know where you are now. You're outside my apartment on the 3rd floor, I shouted, confident she could hear me both through the phone and outside. Did that mean I had won the game? Perhaps, but it hardly mattered anymore. Ha! You're such a joker. How could I possibly be right outside your door? She laughed through the phone, a laugh that seemed to mock my fears. I listened to her voice, slowly turning back to look at the door. The hallway was empty. Quick, it's your turn to ask, she continued in her hoarse voice. I don't want to play anymore. Stop scaring me, I yelled, ready to run out. No way, you lost. You have to accept the punishment. Let's play again. My turn to ask, is your room the only one with the lights on? She asked, her tone playful yet unsettling. I froze, unsure how to respond. The game had taken a turn into something far more ominous than I had anticipated. What started as a lonely Christmas Eve had spiraled into a game of cat and mouse with a mysterious, possibly malevolent stranger. The rules of the game were unclear, and the stakes felt increasingly real and dangerous. I had to make a decision. Do I continue playing this twisted game, or do I try to escape this nightmare that had engulfed my once peaceful Christmas Eve? The choice was mine, and the next move would determine the outcome of this eerie Christmas tale. The mysterious incident in the school bathroom, unraveling a suicide. The bathrooms at our school were located in a small old building at the southwest corner of the playground. They were divided into individual stalls with locks where you could do anything in private, even something as dire as suicide. This is what the seniors told me on my third day at this school. They said that one of the stalls in the girls' bathroom, particularly the one at the eastern end, was the site of a suicide. A senior girl, abandoned by her boyfriend, locked herself in there late at night, slashing her wrist with a small pencil sharpener blade, her blood slowly draining away. Of course, I didn't believe this absurd story. The seniors probably made it up to scare us away so they could smoke in the stalls undisturbed, but that particular stall was indeed locked with a large brass padlock. I guessed it was used for storing cleaning supplies. I liked going to the bathroom after lights out at 10 p.m. There were fewer people, no annoying smell of smoke, a place where I could relax. During summer nights, students generally stayed up late. From 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., I visited the bathroom 5 or 6 times, always finding it full. Tired of waiting and getting bitten by mosquitoes, I kept going back and forth between the dormitory and the bathroom. At 11:10 p.m., I entered the bathroom again. This time, I was in luck. In just 10 minutes, 8 of the 10 stalls had suddenly become vacant. Excluding the locked one, only one was occupied, and as I was using the stall, I read a mystery novel by Agatha Christie on my phone. Suddenly, I heard a flush from the neighboring stall. I thought I must have missed hearing someone enter after the flush. It seemed like they didn't leave, because I would have heard the sound of footsteps in the water. I finished up and prepared to leave. Again, the sound of flushing. Someone's really a clean freak, flushing before even using the toilet. I nearly laughed aloud. Then I stepped onto the wet floor. The flushing sound continued, unceasing, as if someone was holding the flush lever down. Turning, I saw the row of open stalls, except for that one, still locked. My heart raced. Could the senior's story be true? Was there a suicide here? Not believing in ghosts, I decided to check it out. As I approached the locked stall, the flushing stopped abruptly, as if whoever was pressing the lever had suddenly let go. "Who's there?" I called out bravely. My voice echoed off the smooth walls. I felt cold sweat soaking through my cotton vest. In the end, I couldn't muster the courage to take that last step. Back in the dormitory, everyone was asleep. I shared this incident with my best friend and the head of our school's adventure club, Luke Osborne. He was a staunch atheist. He decided that we would break the lock on that stall together over the weekend. On Sunday, the campus was deserted, with most students either home or out having fun. Luke and I stared at the brass lock, trying unsuccessfully to break it. Then I noticed the gap at the top of the stall dividers. The school had left gaps at the top and bottom for ventilation. The top gap was larger, while the bottom was only about 50 centimeters wide. "Why not just climb up and look inside, instead of all this effort?" I suggested. We brought chairs from our dormitories to peek inside. The sight disappointed Luke, who loved bizarre things, and relieved me. Aside from a toilet and a wastebasket, there was nothing else. Maybe someone was in that stall that night, and I just didn't see them, I thought on my way back. For a while, I continued my late-night bathroom visits, never encountering a full house as on that night. Then the school posted a notice about a nighttime power outage for electrical maintenance. At night, I tiptoed into the bathroom with my phone, using its dim light to find an empty stall. While reading a chapter titled Locked Room Murder, I heard footsteps and flushing sounds in the darkness, which felt eerie and terrifying. The flushing next to me continued, as if someone was holding down the lever. It sounded grating in the silent, dark bathroom. "Man, if you're done, just leave," I shouted. The sound stopped, but the person didn't leave. Jokingly, I pulled up my pants and stepped out. I screamed. In the pitch-dark bathroom, I had unknowingly chosen the stall next to the locked one. The sound of running water continued. My phone nearly slipped from my trembling hands. I knocked on the door of the locked stall. "Don't scare people, okay?" I said, my voice shaking. Silence enveloped the area. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, as if leaden to the ground. Drip, drip, drip. I heard water droplets, and I looked down at the ventilation gap. In the dim light of my phone, I peered inside. The stall was empty, no feet visible, but droplets of liquid were falling into the toilet and onto the tiles. A drop hit the floor near the door, splashing onto my face. Then a second, and a third. A metallic, coppery smell filled the air. "Blood," I gasped. Touching my face under the pale light of my phone, I saw my hand covered in blood. My body felt weak, on the verge of fainting. Then from inside the stall, a sobbing voice whispered, "Don't leave me." I jolted awake, my senses sharpening, peering again. The space was still empty, but the floor was covered in liquid, in blood. My phone's light frantically scanned every corner of the stall. Thud! A girl's head, eyes wide open, dropped from somewhere. I screamed. When I woke up, I was surrounded by white. I was in a hospital with Luke sitting beside my bed. "There's a ghost, Luke," I said, still in shock. "Stop it," Luke replied, emotionless. "You fainted in the bathroom. The doctor said you're anemic. Rest for a few days." I knew no one would believe me unless they experienced it themselves. But before I was discharged, that row of bathrooms was demolished. Luke mentioned someone else had encountered a ghost there, and that person was the principal. The creepy event of dorm room 464, the midnight flickering lights. Across from our dorm room, 465 was an empty room, room 464, and no one knew why it was vacant. Our college's housing conditions were far from ideal. The rooms were small, and you can imagine how cramped it was. In such conditions, it was strange to have an empty room. Was that normal? The students in our dorm building constantly complained. My roommates and I frequently voiced our grievances to the dorm manager, Ms. Johnson, but she just listened quietly and never said anything. Months passed this way, until one terrifying day when all the complaints ceased. I vividly remember it was a cold winter day. Perhaps due to the chilly weather, the hallways were deserted before midnight. I nestled into my bed, turned off the light, and started chatting with my roommates. As we chatted, everyone grew sleepy. I yawned, ready to drift off to sleep. That's when I heard footsteps outside. The steps were light and slow, coming closer from the hallway. I didn't pay much attention, thinking someone had just gone to the bathroom. Usually, people hurried due to the cold, but not tonight. But what did it have to do with me? Better to sleep, I thought, to avoid being late for the morning study session. With that in mind, I closed my eyes. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped right outside a door. Not mine, but room 464, across the hall. Then I heard the faint sound of a key turning and a door closing. Someone entered room 464. Who could it be at this hour? Miss Johnson? No, impossible. She never went in there. So who? Was the school assigning someone new to that room? That was outrageous. With such cramped living conditions, and they give one person a whole room. I had to see who it was, what gave them the right to have their own room. Quietly, I got out of bed and opened our door. Sure enough, the light in room 464 was on, flickering, probably due to a faulty connection. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Is anyone there? Please open the door. As soon as I finished speaking, the light in room 464 went out. Shocked, I thought. How rude. It was too late for a confrontation, so I decided to deal with it in the morning. I glared at room 464 and went back to bed. The next morning, I rushed to Miss Johnson's office and confronted her. She turned pale and stared at me with a look of terror. You heard footsteps and saw the light in 464 flickering? Yes, why? Was it after midnight? Yes, it was. No, it can't be. How is that possible? What's going on? Well, okay, I'll tell you, but don't be scared. Scared? Miss Johnson hesitated and then spoke. 3 years ago, room 464 housed 4 female students. One of them, named Hui, was not only beautiful but also a diligent student. She would return from the study hall after midnight. We allowed her to return late, keeping the dorm doors open past midnight. What happened to her? She died. Died? I gasped in shock. Yes, she died 3 years ago in the winter, on a night as cold as last night. The light in room 464 was malfunctioning, and her roommates forgot to warn her. She had a heart condition, and when she turned on the light, it triggered an attack. She died horribly. When I arrived, her roommates had fainted, and her eyes were wide open, staring, with the light flickering. Oh, I screamed, fleeing in terror. Back in the classroom, I told my roommates about my conversation with Miss Johnson. The story spread quickly. After that, no one complained about room 464 anymore. After midnight, Miss Johnson patrolled the hallway, a victorious smile on her face. In fact, room 464 stored some of her items, acquired through dubious means. She didn't want anyone to know, so she fabricated a story based on a tragic accident 3 years prior. The footsteps and the light last night were her doing. Her plan to scare off those demanding room 464 had worked perfectly. She smiled triumphantly when suddenly light footsteps echoed behind her. She turned around, but there was no one there. "Who's there?" she asked. No response. Suddenly, the light in room 464 turned on, flickering. Screams echoed in the hallway, but none of my roommates dared to check. I told my parents about the incident and asked to transfer schools. They agreed, and half a month later, I left that school. Haunted Christmas, the deadly secret of K-State University. This Christmas at the State University, where I'm studying, the atmosphere was tinged with a sense of mystery and dread. Even though the campus was adorned with festive decorations, a chilling event from the preview, Si loomed over us like a dark cloud. My friend Maddie, known for her beauty and charm, was deeply affected by the tragedy that had struck our college last year. A student named Lynn had mysteriously fallen to her death from a dorm building, and the case was unresolved, casting a shadow over our celebrations. Maddie, along with two other roommates, Blue and Quinn, had been trying to move on from the unsettling incident, but the past had a way of catching up. On Christmas Eve, after returning from a festive gathering, we were shocked to find a terrifying scene in our dorm room. Blue was lying motionless on the floor, her eyes wide open in horror. The police arrived soon after and began their investigation. It was suspected that she'd been poisoned. The eeriest part was the discovery of a note under Blue's body, seemingly written by Lynn, the deceased student. The note hauntingly invited Maddie and Quinn to join her in the afterlife. Fear spread across the campus like wildfire, with rumors of a vengeful ghost seeking retribution. Despite the police's efforts, the mystery only deepened when another roommate, Quinn, vanished without a trace. In the midst of this chaos, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Maddie, once the life of the party, had become a shell of her former self, haunted by the possibility that Lynn's restless spirit was seeking vengeance. As the snow began to fall, blanketing the campus in a deceptive calm, I found myself torn between the rational explanations of the police and the chilling whispers of a supernatural force at play. In the back of my mind, a haunting question lingered. Was it really Lynn's ghost orchestrating these tragic events? Or was there a more sinister, earthly explanation behind the horrors unfolding at our university? The tension on campus was palpable as the police investigation hit a dead end. Rumors swirled that Lynn's ghost was behind these horrifying events. Maddie was particularly affected. She seemed to be a shadow of her former self, consumed by guilt and fear. One evening, as I was walking back to my dorm, I noticed a strange figure lingering near the building where Lynn had fallen. As I approached, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a chilling sense of unease. That night, unable to sleep, I lay in bed, pondering the connection between Lynn's death and the recent events. The next day, the police announced a breakthrough. They had uncovered evidence suggesting that Lynn's death was not a suicide, but a murder cleverly disguised. This revelation sent shockwaves through the campus, and suddenly the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. It turned out that Lynn had been embroiled in a complex web of relationships and rivalries. Her death was the result of a bitter feud that had spiraled out of control. The police arrested a suspect, a fellow student who had harbored a deep-seated grudge against Lynn. As the truth came to light, the atmosphere on campus slowly began to return to normal. As summer break dawned, most students eagerly left for home. But there I was, Chris, one of the few who stayed back at the university. My dormitory had a haunting reputation, with stories of past deaths clouding its halls. Whispers of blood flowing from taps in the communal bathrooms, and ghastly sightings had become the stuff of legend. Being the only one from my class still around, a sense of dread often crept over me. One night I returned to my dorm late. After a quick wash in the shared bathroom, I tried to sleep, but a disturbing dripping sound intruded my rest. It seemed to come from the bathroom, but with a strange, almost rhythmic pattern. Restlessness took over, and I decided to call my roommate Mike for some reassurance. However, my phone met me with a chilling response. The number you have dialed is out of service. A sudden urge to use the bathroom meant confronting the source of that eerie dripping. Hesitantly, I left my bed and ventured toward the bathroom. The hallway was dimly lit, casting long shadows that danced around me. As I stepped out, a cold draft slammed my door shut, and I realized I'd left my key inside. With my heart pounding, I approached the bathroom door. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open, only to find the dripping was from a tap left slightly open. A small relief, yet the unease lingered. I quickly used the restroom, trying to ignore the unsettling atmosphere, but as I did, something cold and wet touched my hand. The dripping sound was back. Panic set in as I remembered. The dorm was practically empty except for Eddie, who'd gone to an all-night internet cafe. I hurried out, noticing the tap was dripping again, just like before. I didn't stop to close it. My only thought was to escape. Unbeknownst to me, a shadowy figure appeared in the bathroom after I left. Racing down to the first floor to find Mr. Johnson, the front desk attendant, I discovered his office deserted, with a sinister trace of blood on his bed. In the dim light, I noticed a drop of blood on my hand. Horror-struck, I dashed to the second-floor bathroom, planning to climb out the window as I did in high school to sneak out. But reaching the bathroom, I was greeted by a tap-oozing red liquid as I screamed and ran towards the window. But as I prepared to jump, a wet hand grabbed me. "Young man, where are you off to in such a hurry?" It was Mr. Johnson's voice. I slowly turned, facing a gruesome, bloodied figure. I passed out, only to wake up in my bed, soaked in sweat, thinking it was all a nightmare. But then I heard the dripping again and noticed a dried bloodstain on my hand. My phone showed 12, the same time as in my dream. Terrified, I stayed in my room, enduring a night of fear. The next morning, police arrived. Mr. Johnson was found dead, with a suicide note confessing to a murder 5 years ago. His choice of death? Bleeding out in the bathroom. But why did I have that dream? Or was it a premonition of something darker? The next day, I roamed the quiet halls of the dorm, each step echoing against the walls. The shadow of last night's terror still hung over me. In class, I found it hard to concentrate, my mind drifting back to the chilling events and the dorm's haunted history. I wondered what really happened in that bathroom years ago. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to delve deeper into the dorm's past after my classes. I spent hours digging through old university records and local news archives, searching for any clue about the mysterious death that had occurred years earlier. It was like piecing together a puzzle, each bit of information adding to a larger, more ominous picture. As night approached, the dread returned. My room felt different, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets of the past. I tried to brush off the feeling, telling myself it was just my imagination running wild. That night, sleep was elusive. Every creak and groan of the old building seemed amplified. I tossed and turned, the image of the bloodied figure from my dream etched in my mind. It felt too real to be just a figment of my imagination. Suddenly, a soft knock on my door jolted me awake. Hesitantly, I got up to check, but found the hallway empty. The silence was unsettling. I closed the door and tried to calm my racing heart. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. The dormitory, with its dark past, seemed to hold many secrets, and I felt like I was getting closer to uncovering them. But with each revelation, the sense of danger seemed to grow. The next few days were a blur of classes and restless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to move. Every noise felt like a whisper from the past. Then one evening, as I was studying in my room, I heard the dripping sound again. This time, it was different, more urgent. My heart sank as I realized it was coming from the bathroom. I hesitated, but something compelled me to investigate. As I approached the bathroom, the dripping grew louder. I pushed the door open and was met with an eerie sight. The tap was running, but this time the water was clear. Yet the sense of something sinister lingered in the air. I stood there, trying to make sense of it all. Was I losing my mind, or was there something more to this dormitory than just old tales and rumors? The more I uncovered, the more I felt drawn into a mystery that was far beyond anything I could have imagined. As I turned to leave the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. A shadow, a figure, just out of sight. I spun around, but there was nothing there. My heart raced as I realized that this dormitory's haunting past was not just a story. It was something living, breathing, and it was right there with me. That night, I lay awake, my mind racing with thoughts. The shadowy figure in the bathroom mirror haunted me. I could no longer tell if I was trapped in a nightmare or if the dorm's ghostly past had somehow seeped into my reality. The line between the two had blurred. The next morning, I resolved to confront this mystery head-on. I couldn't live in fear any longer. After my classes, I visited the university's historical archives, hoping to find something, anything that could shed light on the ghostly occurrences. There, buried in a dusty corner, I found an old newspaper article. It detailed a tragic event that had occurred in my dormitory decades ago. A student, overwhelmed by pressure and isolation, had taken his own life in the communal bathroom. His death had sparked rumors and ghost stories, but over time, the truth had faded into obscurity. I read the article over and over, each word sending chills down my spine. The student's story was heart-wrenching, and I couldn't help but feel a connection to him. His loneliness, his despair. It was as if I could feel it echoing through the halls of the dormitory. That evening, as I walked through the dorm, the atmosphere felt heavier, charged with unspoken words and hidden pain. The air was thick with the weight of a tragedy long ignored. In my room, I sat in silence, pondering over the student's fate. It struck me then, perhaps what I was experiencing was not just the remnants of a haunted past, but a cry for acknowledgement, a plea to be remembered. Determined to put an end to this haunting, I decided to hold a small memorial for the forgotten student. I gathered a few candles and placed them in the communal bathroom where his life had tragically ended. I stood there in the dim candlelight, offering a moment of silence, a gesture of recognition to his lost soul. As I stood there, the air around me shifted. It felt lighter, almost peaceful. The oppressive feeling that had haunted the dormitory seemed to dissipate. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm. I returned to my room and slept soundly that night, the ghostly whispers and eerie occurrences fading into the background. In the following days, the dormitory felt different. It was as if a weight had been lifted, a wound finally allowed to heal. In confronting the dorm's haunted past, I not only uncovered a forgotten tragedy, but also learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the ghosts we fear are simply memories seeking closure, stories yearning to be told. And as I moved forward, I carried with me the memory of the student whose life had been lost in those walls. His story, once shrouded in fear and mystery, had found a voice through me. In remembering him, I had brought peace to both his spirit and my own.